let's get started. So we will continue our discussion from the last class. Let me give a quick recap and then I will open it up for questions. So what we were doing in the last class, we were learning ratios. Within ratios, I said that we will be learning it with two perspectives. One is that we would say that if you are a particular stakeholder, then could you imagine which ratios to use and in what way to use them? And then later on today, we will start saying that if you are given a ratio, can you imagine which stakeholders would be interested in them and in which way, that whether they would want this ratio to be high or low. We had started this first rule that I had frozen everybody's point of view as a lending manager, and you needed to decide whether to dispense a 5 lakh rupee of a loan to me or not. I have come to you for a loan application and the interest rate you are charging is 10%. So what did we decide yesterday? This is what we had discussed in the last class. That first of all, your objective should be that define what is it that you are looking after. What is it that you are after? Basically, your objective. First of all, you define your objective. Once you define your objective, then also classify or segregate them in certain subheadings if they are of differing nature. We saw that as a lending manager, your objective is to make sure that I do not default. That's what is your objective. But this default has two subparts with which you need to make sure. Which you need to make sure that I don't default upon. Which is what? Number one was interest payment and number two was principal repayment. Why did I keep it separate? I assumed it to be a very traditional kind of a loan. Let's say today I take 5 lakh rupees from you and I keep giving you 50,000 every period, let's say 10% of interest. And in the last period, I give you the 50,000 interest as well as the 5 lakh rupee of principal back. That's what is our setup. Now, in this setup, you needed to decide whether to extend the loan to me or not. So for that, what we discussed is that the nature of these periodic payments called interest is different. That is why they should be a separate criterion. And the nature of this one-time big amount repayment, that is principal, is also different. That is why it makes us to keep these two objectives segregated, and we look at different criteria to ensure or to give ourselves a confidence that interest repayment is not in danger and principal repayment is also not in danger. In the last class, we looked at only the first one. What did we say? We say that we wanted to understand that whether interest payment is safe or not. So for that, we had a lot of possibilities. First of all, we understood that interest payment is a periodic payment. The moment it is a periodic payment, that is why we needed to look at periodic return. And where do you get periodic return? You get periodic return in the income statement. That is why we focused or shifted our attention to income statement. After we have shifted our attention to income statement, in the income statement, there are a lot of levels of profitability. We could have decided based on, we could have compared our interest based on the turnover or sales, as some people mentioned it in the last class. We could have decided based on the gross profit the firm is making. We could have decided or compared our interest based on EBITDA, or compared it to the EBITDA that company is making. Or we could have compared it to the EBIT that company is making. We could have compared it to EBT that the company is making. And finally, we could also compare the interest burden to the net profit that company is making. What did we discuss in the last class? We discussed in the last class that if we look at this objectively, that then we found out that only one of these profitability levels makes sense to compare the interest burden with, and none of the others do. That if we would have given loan based upon examining how much sales the company is making alone, or if we would have given it based on only gross profit alone, or EBITDA alone, or EBT or net profit, we would have ended up making a mistake, or we could have ended up making mistake. What sort of mistake? If you are looking at these profits, then you are being too relaxed on the company. Let us say the company is making enough sales, let's say 50 crore rupees of sales, whereas the burden of interest is only 50,000. That doesn't tell you anything, because what if the sales is 50 crore rupees but COGS itself is 60 crore rupees? Then what? Then the company is actually in a loss. So sales was not an appropriate number. Similarly, about gross profit, let's say the company is making enough gross profit, but there are too many operating expenses. Then that is also not a good amount. Let us say the company is making EBITDA, but the machineries are extremely expensive, and every time they need to replace the machinery, the company is losing almost all its earning. So EBITDA is also not a correct number. EBT, when you looked at the last two numbers, then we found out that you are being too strict. That if you compare your interest burden to net profit, you are being too strict, because net profit is not only after all the interest, but it is also after the taxes. So if you apply your 2x or 3x or whatever be your multiple to net profit, you are being too strict. You would end up sending some of the even eligible borrowers away, and you would lose your opportunity to make income because of the interest payment from them. So you would have ended up making mistake. And same with EBT. We saw that the only meaningful number where you need to compare the interest is EBIT. Why? Because it is from this pool of earning that we pay interest. It is from EBIT that you disburse the interest payment. That is why we wanted to compare interest from EBIT. And that is what led us to the conclusion of the discussion yesterday, is that there is a ratio which is called an interest coverage ratio. And when we calculate this ratio, the ratio is EBIT divided by interest. Now, what was the bottom line of this entire discussion? The bottom line was not only to teach you one ratio, but bottom line is to teach you a general phenomenon that whenever you want to derive any ratio, then what goes in the numerator and what goes in the denominator has to strictly be justified by what purpose you are going to use this ratio for. The purpose of this ratio is to understand that what is the capacity of an organization to keep paying the interest. That is why in the numerator we keep only EBIT. We never keep EBITDA or gross profit or sales or EBT or net profit in the numerator of interest coverage ratio. This is where we were in the last class. Today we will see how do you make sure that the principal amount is safe or not. But before that, any question up till here? Yeah, go ahead. Khushbu, question?
Because if, let's say, interest itself is very large, like
Yes.
interest to the other lenders other than me, myself.
Yes. Yes.
So what to do in that case?
Okay.
So
I think we had already discussed this also in the last class. When you put your denominator, you put all the interest, existing as well as potential interest. Let us say existing interest itself is 30,000. And after that, let's say you also give your loan, then your loan will carry an interest of 50,000. Then the denominator should contain this entire 80,000. So 80,000 should be your denominator. Let's say you want 2x of multiple, then you will say that you would not give loan to any party who has EBIT of anything less than 1,60,000. If they have EBIT of 1,60,000 or lesser than 1,60,000, you will say that this firm is too risky, my interest payment is not safe. So this is how you are taking care of the existing interest and your own interest. Okay? Yeah, more question? Okay, so let's carry on. Now we will go shift our attention. So what was the bottom line? Once again, let me repeat it just in one sentence. The bottom line is, of course, teaching you the interest coverage, but the main learning was that, let's say you are coming up with your own ratio. Always make sure that what purpose you are going to use this ratio. That should drive what goes in numerator and denominator. That's it. That's what I wanted you to understand. Let's go to the next one. Next one is, how do you decide that your principal amount is safe or not? What question will you ask me? Or what should I show so that you are confident that I will have enough money to pay your principal amount later in future? Your principal is safe. I will not default on that. Yeah, think about it. Let me know your opinions.
Long-term assets.
Long-term assets. Why long-term asset? Why does she say long-term asset? Because principal amount is a big amount, and it is going to be due in a long period of time from now. So that is why she is mentioning long-term asset. Basically, her idea is that if I don't pay, then you will sell the long-term asset of the company and get your money back. That's the idea. I think I hope everybody knows the okay. Let me write the number first. Long-term asset. Let us say I have this much long-term assets. I have 50 lakh long-term assets today. Will I get the loan? I wanted a loan of only 5 lakh rupees. My already existing long-term assets are 50 lakh rupees. You are satisfied that your principal amount is going to be safe?
No, sir. We have to see how much liability is pledged to that amount.
How much liabilities? So liabilities are also 50 lakh. All the liabilities are 50 lakh. That's I've just started the business.
I was referring to debt.
Debt. Now is the catch. Basically, you see that intuitively people think about assets. It's very natural. Why? Because we think that, oh, in case this guy doesn't pay up, we will have the option to sell the asset off and recover our money. But you need to also keep it in mind that how much of already there is a, what's the kind of sentence I'm making? How much of a claim already is there on the existing asset base? For example, let me make a case 1 and case 2. Let's say case 1, that let's say in the asset side, this is the only asset, let's say long-term asset of 50 lakh. And in the liability side, case 1, I have capital of, let's say, 49 lakhs and debt of 1 lakh. Or let me make a case 2, that case 2 would be debt of 49 lakhs and capital of 1 lakh. Let's call this case blue and let me call this one as case red. Now, in which particular case would you feel more confident that your money is safe? Red or blue?
Red, sir.
Red. Why? Because in this particular case, in case of red, apart from your 5 lakh rupees, only 1 lakh will be your competition. So total 6 lakh would be competing for a resource pool of 50 lakh. You guys know the priority in case of a payment. Let us say I have taken a loan from a business. Let's say this is the business, and 3 people have given loan to this. Let's say or 3 parties have or let's say 4 parties have put money to run this business. Let's say there is a Yes Bank, then there is a No Bank, then there is a I don't know bank, and then there is Mrityunjay, the owner. So these people are the lenders and this is the owner. All of them have contributed money to run the business in this proportion. Let us say this guy has been given 20 lakh rupees, this guy has given 10 lakh rupees, this guy has given 30 lakh rupees, and this guy has given 50 lakh rupees. These 30, 20, 10 and 30 are in form of debt, of which only I don't know bank's loan is a secured loan, and others is unsecured loan. And then there is owner which has contributed equity. And that is how the entire organization is funded by total 1 crore 10 lakh rupees. Over a certain duration, let's say the firms suffer certain losses and there is a bankruptcy filing, and after selling everything, let us say this business is able to get only 40 lakh rupees. Business के पास जितने asset थे सब बेच डाले and you could generate only 40 lakh rupees. Then what will happen to this 40 lakh rupees? Anybody would want to answer this? What will happen to this 40 lakh? In which manner will I make payment to Y, N, K and M?
So first K, because it's a secured debt.
Basically, there is a catch. The catch is that when we say a secured loan, then there would be a security. Let us say property 1 was in hypothecation. You guys understand the meaning of the word secured loan? That something would be mortgaged or hypothecated. Basically, this means that this particular property, this guy has the first claim. Okay. So it is not that from the entire proceed, this person will get the money first. No. Only from this particular property, this guy will get the money first. Let us say after you dispose the property 1 and you got 15 lakh rupees from this. Then out of this 40, this 15 is from property 1. This 15 will completely go to K. That's what secured loan means. That for this particular property, he is the first claimant. Yes, samajh aa gaya? And for rest of the payment, they will get the money in their ratio. So after paying 15, this guy's claim is 15, then 20, then 10. How much money is left? After paying 15 out of 40, the money is left is 25. So this 25 lakh rupees will be distributed in Y is to N is to K in this ratio. They will be given in the ratio of 20 is to 10 is to 15. This money is still short of making their entire claim good. Their full claim will not be satisfied. That is why in this case, the owner, that is me, I would not get anything from the firm back. That is the system of payment. Now, that is what I was claiming, that let us say in this case itself, if there was no bank or I don't know bank, you were the only one, Yes Bank was the only bank, then you would be the only claimant to this 40 lakh of asset. Then you would have felt more secure about the possibility of getting your money back. That is what we were discussing here, that in case of red versus blue company, the existing loan itself is 49 in company blue. That means out of total 50 lakh of claim, already 49 belongs to somebody else, some outsiders who have the same preference or priority as you would have if you give the loan. That is what makes this company very risky. Whereas in case of company red, the existing claim is only 1 lakh rupees. So this guy 1 lakh and you would give 5 lakh. So total 6 lakh rupee of claim to be made from 50 lakh rupees. Your cushion is much larger. And that is why when you wanted to see a long-term survivability or long-term ability to pay their obligations of any company, then the ratio you would want to see is as follows. Either you would look at a ratio which is called a debt to equity ratio. That is, in this case, it is 1 divided by 49 for company red. Or you would look at debt to total asset ratio. Debt to total asset ratio, which in this case is total asset is what? Total asset is 50. So you would calculate this ratio as 1 divided by 50. Or you would look at equity to total asset ratio. Equity to total asset ratio. So in this case, equity is 49 and debt total asset is 50. Needless to say that if you are a lender, you would want debt to equity ratio to be as low as possible and equity to total asset as high as possible. That will give you more confidence that your money is safe. What if you are giving a secured loan? Then what?
Sir,
Yeah.
can you just repeat this one? I mean, like debt to equity, only the ratio part.
Debt to equity is how much is the debt and how much is the equity. So per
this
rupee
is
of owner's money, you would want outsiders' claim to be as less as possible as an existing lender. So in the numerator, you have outsiders' claim, existing claim, and in denominator, you have money put in by the owners. So if the owner has put in more money compared to how much outsiders claim, that means there is a more cushion available for you to sell off in the future, which is what we see in the case of company red right here. Whereas if you calculate the same ratio for company blue, it would be, let me change these numbers, so many 49 and 1. Let me change, let's say company blue has 3 lakh of capital and let's say 47 lakh of loan. So the debt to equity ratio for company B would be calculated like this. Company B would be 47 divided by 3. So for company B, this ratio is very high, but for company blue, that is company red, this ratio is very low. What do these numbers say? These numbers are indicating that for company red, the situation is not that severe, that there are only very few claimants to the existing resources that are infused by the owner. Whereas in case of company blue, compared to what are the resources infused by the owner, the outside claim is already too huge. So if I also become one more claimant in that company, then my position will be very risky.
Sir, so in the perspective of a owner as well, so the company red is a safe one, right? So because the owner also will be getting
Let us
because
not, Bhanu, for a specific purpose, let us not look at it from any other perspective right now, because we have a dedicated discussion coming up on this, that what would owner want to do. Right now, let's say only we are thinking from the lender. Owner, whether they are living, dying, their organization is surviving or not surviving, you are not bothered. What are you bothered about? Living, dying, you better be bothered. But let's say you are the lender, you are bothered about whether your principal amount is safe or not. So from your perspective, you would say that company red is making a much better sense as far as safety of your money is concerned. Okay, is it clear? Okay,
yes, sir.
let's carry on. And debt to total asset and equity to total asset are different representation of the same idea. So to answer the same anxiety, you could do any of these three calculations. All of these would lead you to the same result. Only the computation, the number, and a slight bit of interpretation will be slightly different. But they are answering the same anxiety. Now I'm posing a question to the class is, what if this was not an unsecured loan, but this is a secured loan? Then what? Do I still have to look at all this detail that I have discussed, debt, equity, and whatnot? Let's say you said that your debt to equity requirement is something else. I'm saying that I'm giving a secured loan. So will you give me the loan or not? Will I get the loan?
We'll be looking at the worth of the security that I'm giving altogether.
Very good. Worth of the security. So let us say I gave you a really good security. Let's say I gave you what? What is the best? What security do you want to put? That is the same security I'll give you.
Gold.
Gold.
Sir.
Let's give gold. So let's say I want a loan of 5 lakh rupees and I put in security gold, which is currently worth rupees, already it is worth rupees 6 lakh. In future, the gold prices will also go up, but today itself it is worth 6 lakh. Then what? Will I get the loan? The tone this guy is speaking, of course, there must be some catch, but I'm not able to figure out what it is. Let me show you. It sounds very intuitive, right? Sometimes there is no catch. And I am making sure that I am giving you the best security that you could ask for. That too, not of the total value of the loan, even more than the value of the loan. Then are you still not happy? अब क्या करके दिखा दूं बताओ? Maybe some backflip आपके बैंक ऑफिस में आकर के दिखाऊं, then I'll get the loan. What do I have to do? So now people will be feeling safe. My question to the class is that if I give a good quality of collateral, am I eligible to get the loan? By eligible, I mean that now you don't need to bother about debt to equity. Now you don't need to be bothered about anything else. Let me show you what the catch is. Yeah, go ahead, Siddharth.
Maybe you can see if they have not given the same agreement to some other lender.
ऐसा नहीं होता यार, मतलब I'm right now assuming that I'm not cheating. Okay. Cheating apart कि यही वाला उधर भी hypothecate कर दिया, वही उधर भी hypothecate. When people hypothecate, then there is certain requirement wherein it's very obvious that you cannot mortgage the same thing at two places. कि वही जो 50 तोला लेके घूम रहे और वो 50 जगह को मॉर्गेज कर दिया. No, that's not how it is done. You need to submit proper papers. Maybe if it is gold, you even need to, if you don't have paper, you need to submit the possession, something you need to do. Okay, so let's say, cheating aside, let me demonstrate that if we ended up saying that if it is a secured loan and the mortgage which is being put is of a very good quality, then we don't need to be bothered about what debt to equity and what interest coverage and what not. Let me show you the problem. And now suddenly the world will start to. Now, how will the world start to end? I will give you an example how the same mistake was done by some bankers and it led to such a huge financial crisis of 2008 and onwards. You guys have heard of subprime crisis? And then the global recession following that 2008 onwards.
Yes, sir.
Lehman Brothers and many organizations failed. And then a lot of organizations are even today, so many years after that, they are not completely out of the repercussions. In fact, a lot of countries in Europe are not out of that recession even yet. Now you can imagine the scale of this this error. But let me show you what the error itself was. Let me show you. So this one was called subprime crisis. Subprime crisis. Now, what is subprime? Anybody? What is subprime?
In case of default,
Subprime. Is that good?
Sir, I was saying it's loans given to people who are not actually credit worthy.
Yes, that's what subprime is. Have you guys heard of prime lending rate, PLR? What is prime in prime lending rate? Anybody?
To the most worthy creditor.
The most worthy borrower. Amar, you have same thing, or you want to say something?
No, sir.
Prime lending rate, basically that what type of interest you would quote to the most worthy borrowers. Okay, let me give you an example. Let us say, unfortunately, I feel so sad that I cannot give you the visual representation of this because you guys have not experienced this. Because I don't know how many of you have even been to the campus, but typically this is how it happens in the first week that you guys enter to the campus. That the moment you enter to the campus, there will be different tents by all the different banks. It's almost like they are selling some Coca-Cola or something. But if you enter their tents, what are they selling? They are selling the loan. That you enter their tent and then you give your papers and then suddenly you are disbursed loan in some 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so. But let us say you had gotten admission to some random college of management, which was not that reputed college, and then you wanted an education loan. Do you think that there some 5-6 banks would sit with a queue and then they want to attract you? Hamare yahan aao, 2 lakh pe 1 lakh rupees free. Do you think that's going to happen? Now, what is the difference? The difference is in the credit worthiness. That they are giving loan to you because they think that they are much more secure about the repayment that will come because of your future earning potential. Whereas in a random college of management, the other student might not get the loans that easily. Why? Because the banks will have a little bit of question or doubt about their future earning potential, and that is why they are not giving the loan to them. Now, suddenly, let's say there is some aggressive bank that decides that I don't care. If it is a student, they are coming for a loan, I will give the loan to them. Now, whether tomorrow they don't even join a job and then they use all this money to do certain narcotics, or I don't care, I will give them the loan. That's what is subprime. That I didn't bother examining their credit worthiness, that whether they deserve the loan or not, I still went ahead and gave the loan to them. Now, quick question, why would some sane person want to give a loan to subprime borrower then? Sounds ridiculous, right? This is what happened in the US. A lot of famous banks gave loan to the borrowers which were subprime borrowers, means that they didn't have capacity to pay. Sounds atrocious right now, but unfortunately, these guys didn't attend my classes. So that is why they ended up ruining not only their companies, but they ended up ruining a lot of countries. What happened? They gave the loan based on only the hypothecation or the mortgage, the quality. They said that the quality of the mortgage is, you know what, fantastic. What a quality. What was the mortgage? These were housing loans. These were housing loans, and the house itself were the mortgages. Now, what was the rationale at that point of time when they were giving the loan? The rationale was that they looked at the quality of the mortgage. The way somebody said that give me gold. So suddenly I said that yes, take gold. So at that point of time, they looked at house. They would have examined that what is the quality of the house as a mortgage. They looked at the price of housing in past 5 years. It was going up. Past 10 years, it was going up. Past 20 years, it was going up. Past 30 years, it was going up. Now, suddenly they felt, if I look at past 5 years, the prices go up. Past 10 years, the prices go up. Past 20, past 30 years, the prices go up. Then what do I conclude?
Real estate is a strong market.
There is a huge strong market, and in future also prices will go up. Now, once you have this assumption, now that was the root cause of all the errors. That you said that this is such a fantastic hypothecation that I don't need to deal with what debt to equity, what interest coverage, and what other random analytical tools. The hypothecation itself is good enough for me to protect. Good enough for protecting me. How? Let me give an example. Let us say I am a random drunkard. I don't have a job, and I have approached to the office and I want a housing loan of 50 crore rupees. Give me, I don't know how many zeros, you can put your zeros. That 50 crore ka ghar chahiye mujhe. You will ask that why do I give the loan? Then suddenly there is a smart fellow in there. They said that what's your problem? Give the loan and keep the house itself in hypothecation. The loan you are giving has an interest rate of, let's say, 4%. But the housing prices itself are rising at 10%. Then what's your problem? Let's say 1 year passes by and this guy doesn't do anything. He cannot pay. Then what will be our situation? If he pays up, anyway, good. But if he doesn't pay, then what will be our situation? What will we need? This is what will be our claim. We need our 50 lakh rupees. In case of a default, we need it immediately. And we need our 4% of interest on this. 50 crore and 2 crore, total 52 crore rupees. What is our possibility that we will get? By 1 year, the prices would have gone to 55 crore rupees. So can you not sell something which is worth 55 crore rupees for 50 and recover 52 crore rupees? Cakewalk. So what is it in the worst case you have to lose? That is where they were wrong. The problem was that there is no economic variable which can indefinitely continue to rise at a rate of 10%. There was a bubble formation in the property prices. After a little while of things going smooth, the property prices stagnated. When property prices stagnated, then all these defaulters, the banks started to lose money. If banks start to lose money and then they are forcing those houses in the market, then the property prices will further plummet. Property prices further plummet means what? There is even more downturn in the market. If there is a downturn in the economy, more people will lose their jobs. If more people will lose their jobs, then more people will start defaulting. If more people will start defaulting, there will be even more supply of the houses in the market. And you know, if supply is high and demand is not changing, if anything, demand would have fallen down by then what happened to prices? Then the bubble started to burst. And this led to such a huge problem in the global economy that it was one of the most severe recession that the world had seen in a very long period of time. What instead should they have? Or what mistake did they do? They just couldn't differentiate between the necessary condition and sufficient condition. you are getting a good quality of hypothecation or mortgage, that should instill a little bit of extra confidence in you. It is not a substitute for all the other criterion. It doesn't become a sufficient condition. So you should have still gone ahead and done rest of the credit worthiness analysis. That what if this bubble burst? How much percent of a loss we would be making? Are we having enough cushion to survive even in that condition? So if the banks would have done that kind of analysis, they would have given appropriate weightage to the fact that there is a mortgage and not undue weightage. Yeah, question, Amar, go ahead.
So this is not a question like in the case of Vijay Mallya also, when he went away and the bank started acquiring his property, they got to know that the value of the property was comparatively way too less.
Yeah.
You know, like, and they were not, obviously it was like almost like 10-20% of the money that he fled with. So this is the same thing that happened with him also, like they basically gave him the loan on the basis of the mortgage that he was providing, or it was something else.
Malia's case is completely different. That is more of a fraud. Basically, he got loan by unfair means. If you look at their performance, he didn't deserve the loan. So as I gave you the example in the last class that he was claiming, or he was boasting, at least from the banker's side, the boasting was that this guy never defaulted. That is why we gave him the loan. Now, everybody, even today, you start giving me the loan. Let's say all the banks start giving me the loan. And once I'm facing a danger in one loan and somebody else is ready to give me the loan of a bigger amount, then I will never face a danger as long as this rolling on goes on. That people keep rolling on. Maybe one day my loan will be bigger than the entire economy of India. So you will get caught only on the day first no comes, first refusal comes, that no, enough. We don't want to give you loan.
But sir, like if you borrow a loan from a particular bank, and from the very next day, or like after a week or so, you borrow another amount from different bank, but then that other bank will try to get the information that you borrowed from a earlier bank as well.
Yes, you need to fill those information. Yes. See, this is a kind of a very maleficent Ponzi scheme. That let's say I start a business. I start a business by investing 10 crore rupees in this. And I give a very huge projection to the bank, and from the banks, let us say I get, okay, I'm not giving you this lesson that do it. Basically, I'm saying that don't do it. That's why I'm giving you this lesson. So let us say I went to 2 or 3 banks and I gave them that I have such a fantastic business. Give me 10 crore ka loan. So one bank gave you 10 crore ka loan. One bank gave you only 8 crore ka loan. One bank gave you, let us say, 17 crore ka loan. One bank gave you, let's say, 5 crore ka loan. So now total you have 40 crore ka loan. Now how much money your business has? Total 10 crore of yours and 40 crore of yours. Total 50 crore rupees. Now what did this guy do? This guy gave himself maybe a salary. Let's say I will give myself, I'm such a fantastic owner, I will give myself a salary of 20 crore rupees per year. So in 2 years, first year 20 crore is out, in second year 20 more crore rupees is out. By the third year, the company is bankrupt. And I invested how much? 10 crore rupees. How much I got? 40 crore rupees. In what form? I earned my salary. I'm a hardworking CEO, right? So I earned my salary of 40 crore rupees. Now suddenly the company went bankrupt. I said that, oh no, what, you know what? Even I lost my 10 crore of my hard-earned money, you know. But this is not a loss. You invested 10 crore rupees. You didn't do anything. If anything, you stole 30 crore rupees from the banks. That is what is the problem. This is happening in many companies. That is what we also say that is called a governance issue. That governance issues in a lot of companies, top management, that they are splurging too much money on their own salary that the profitability of the companies do not even justify. Company is in ruins and the CEOs are getting 40% or 30% or sometimes even 50% raise on already such a fat salaries. Now it should surprise anybody that if the company is not doing good, if the economy is in slowdown and there is a pandemic or something, How is somebody who already has a package of, let us say, 15 crore rupees getting a 50% raise? Because they are saying that I am nominating myself for a 50% raise because I have done a fantastic job. So that's what is the problem. Okay. Yeah. So let's get back to our topic. So our topic, what were we doing? We were saying something like this. So when we discussed that we want to understand ratios and we want to understand from a particular stakeholder's point of view, what have we established so far? Point number one, that establish your objectives very clearly. Once you establish your objectives, then bifurcate them into subparts if these subparts have different nature. Once you have bifurcated them into subparts, then go and attend all of these subparts separately. Because if you are satisfied in one, it does not automatically mean that you are satisfied in other as well. Then what do? You need to keep it in mind, the distinction between necessary condition and sufficient condition. Do not be over glamored by some of the conditions that some salesperson or some unscrupulous people would want to push, that I am giving such a fantastic kind of a mortgage. Then forget about all this analysis. You don't need to do analysis because the mortgage will be there. Same with the guarantor, that I have Amitabh Bachchan as the guarantor. Now what is the guarantee that Amitabh Bachchan will be there when the time of the repayment comes? What if Amitabh Bachchan himself does not pay up and he default, then what? So you should always keep all the possibilities in mind. When you are taking risk, you should always take only calculated risk. So once you understand that this extra cushion is giving me a little bit of extra confidence, it doesn't mean to say that extra bit of cushion making all the rest of the analysis irrelevant, then you will end up taking correct decision. You would understand that how much risk is an appropriate amount of risk to take. Obviously, in the business, you need to take risk to earn return. But these risks should not be stupid risk, as a lot of US banks did in the subprime crisis. Okay. Any questions before we move ahead? Chalo, dharti ko bacha diya na, right? So no more subprime crisis. Now we will look at ratios in other fashion now. Now we would want to understand the ratios in this direction, that if you have a ratio, can you imagine which stakeholders would be interested in those ratios? And more importantly, whether they would want those ratios to be high or they would want it to be low. So let's go ahead and discuss that. Yeah, Khushbu, question?
Sir?
Yeah, go ahead, Banu.
In the above case, in the fourth step, like what is the fourth step? Can you just after we identify what are the particular aspects, we look at each of this.
Basically,
so the risk.
In the fourth point, I want you to understand that keep examining all the parameters, keeping it in mind that what is an appropriate weightage to a particular parameter. Sometimes you end up giving undue importance to a particular parameter. So don't do that. If some parameter is just one in a series of 5 parameters, then make sure that you go to rest 4. You don't say ki, "Arey, what a gold mine we have hit in the 3rd parameter." Then forget about all the rest of the parameter and go ahead and take the decision. That's what I'm warning you against. That sometimes, especially if people don't have a good oversight of the entire issue, they might end up suggesting you incorrectly. And just because others are doing it should not be any guide at all. You should use your judgment, you should use your wisdom, and always segregate the necessary condition and sufficient condition. If you do that, you would give appropriate importance to any criteria. You should understand that the purpose of what we are teaching here is not that, let us say, you remembered a particular ratio, or you remembered where to take debt from, that whether you understood that, oh, debt should be available in the balance sheet in the liability side, and where to take equity from, and could you divide, and whether your calculator is working properly or not. In the exam, unfortunately, it may get reduced to these kind of ridiculous tests, but its relevance is not that. So right now, just listen the story, try to articulate, try to understand, try to digest as much as possible. And if possible, try to understand all of these with a questioning mind, that am I teaching something wrong? is it going to fail sometime in future? Is it going to fail in some particular scenario? That's what should be your approach.